Okay, so the new Avatar set's coming out next month, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of just go down a list of the new keywords they're introducing and kind of breaking down how they're going to play out and how to play around them, basically. So the keywords that will be introduced that are new to this set are Airbend, Earthbend, Firebend and Waterbend. They're also bringing back lessons, shrines and sagas, so I'll go over some comments I have about those. So for the first keyword, airbending or airbend, if we look at Appa, when Appa enters, airbend any number of other target non-land permanents you control. This means that you exile them. While each one is exiled, its owner may pay the cost of 2 rather than its original cost to replay that card. Being able to pull any non-land permanent back from the board is obviously strong. You can use this, especially in the case of Appa because he has flash. You can use this if someone targets a creature with removal. If a creature is enchanted in a negative way, you can again pull it back to your hand and then replay it for 2, which is fairly cost effective. And you can also take advantage of an enters effect and be able to keep recasting something that has a very powerful enters effect. And then in the case of Appa, it also has the text that says whenever you cast a spell from exile, create a 1/1 white ally creature token. So this card has self synergy, and in general there will probably be other cards that synergize with airbend. So we have a few other cards that have airbend, for example Ang also can airbend something. You can only target one thing, whereas Appa can target many things, so that Airbend won't always allow you to target multiple things. It's also worth noting that Ang won't have flash, so you won't be able to do it at instant speed. When considering airbending synergies, some cards I thought of bringing up is Corrupt Court Official, which does when this creature enters, target opponent discards a card. So the ability to airbend this card off the board, pay 2 mana again, and get your opponent to keep discarding cards. This could be a pretty powerful synergy that gets your opponent to discard most of their hand if you can reliably airbend this card enough times. Cards like Corrupt Court Official have been strong in some formats, weak in others. It really depends on your ability to trigger this multiple times. Then you have enchantment removal like Path to Redemption. Enchants creature, enchanted creature can't attack or block. So if this is played on one of your creatures, you can obviously airbend that creature back to your hand or back into exile and then play it from exile for 2 mana, and that way you're kind of countering this piece of removal pretty effectively. Next up we have Earthbend, and so for example the Badger Mole, when this creature enters you Earthbend 2, target land you control becomes a 0/0 creature, it has haste and it's still a land, and then depending on what number you Earthbend, so this is Earthbend 2, you put 2 1/1 counters on it. Other cards will have a different number attached to Earthbend. When that card dies or is exiled, it will return to the battlefield tap. Also on Badger Mole, creatures you control that have 1/1 counters on them will have trample. So this is a way of turning your lands into creatures. So downside being pretty obvious that if you attack with those lands, they will be tapped and you can't tap them for mana, but it is a very powerful way of getting a very wide board very quickly. Another important thing to consider with Earthbending is you're much more willing to trade these land creatures away because they'll just die and return to the field. There's not really a big loss, but at the end of the day you're still trading with your opponent. We also have Earthbending Lesson. It's a sorcery that has Earthbend 4, so Earthbend can be on creatures, it can be on sorcery spells, it can probably be on instant spells as well. There'll be a lot of sources of Earthbend in this format. When thinking about Earthbending, it's important to consider some strong synergies. So we have Buzzard Wasp Colony. It's a 2/2 flying bird insect. When this creature enters, you may sacrifice an artifact or creature if you do draw a card. That's not the part of the card we're interested in. What we're interested in is whenever another creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, put its counters on this creature. So if you think about that, every time you Earthbend something and then that dies, not only do you get the land back, but now you have a creature that's soaking up all those 1/1 counters. This very quickly will become a disgustingly large flyer that your opponent must deal with. This is going to be a huge synergy card for Earthbending. It's going to make Earthbending much, much stronger. We also have Toph, the first metal bender. What she does is she turns non-token artifacts you control into lands, and then there are additional types. They don't gain the ability to tap for mana, but the fact that all your artifacts are now lands and that you can turn them into creatures, and then when they die they still come back to the board and get any enters effects or any other sort of effects they'd get, And so you don't really lose your artifact, you're just getting more creatures on the board. Next we have Firebending. Firebending's pretty interesting. It basically is whenever this creature attacks, add red mana. So if you have Firebending 1, it will be 1 red mana. You can get cards that have like Firebending 3, so when they attack, they give you 3 red mana. You also have cards like Fire Nation Attacks, which summons 2 red soldier creature tokens that also have Firebending 1. So being able to get lots of creatures down that are able to attack your opponent quickly, getting lots of extra mana that will allow you to curve out nicely. As for Firebending synergies, we have something like Deserter's Disciple, which is tap this card and then any of the target creature you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. What that means for you is you're able to get your 2/2 Firebend 1 cards attacking your opponent. They can't be blocked, so you're able to generate that excess mana every turn, which will really help you curve out. You also have Flopsy, Boomy's Buddy. The part of this card that's interesting is each creature you control with power 4 or greater can't be blocked by more than one creature. So if you have something that's like, I don't know, a 4/4, 5/5, and it has Firebending on it, it means that your opponent will either have to take a pretty bad block, or you're going to be able to generate, you know, however many mana your Firebending allows you to generate on that card. So just making blocking hard for your opponent is going to be the key synergy for Firebending. Okay, so Waterbending is quite interesting. So for example, we have Flexible Waterbender. Waterbend 3, this creature has base power and toughness 5/2 until the end of turn. And normally this creature has a 2/5 power toughness. Basically what Waterbending allows you to do is, for a cost, you're able to do some effects. So here you get to swap the power and toughness on the card. It costs 3 mana, but Waterbending allows you to pay the Waterbend cost by tapping artifacts and creatures to help. Each one you tap costs 1, pays 1. So the key way to think about Waterbending is you're looking for a powerful effect, and you're looking to have a board that has a lot of cheap creatures and a lot of cheap artifacts that you can tap that help you pay for that effect more efficiently. So for example, Giant Koi has Waterbend 3, so if you get 3 mana and you can tap stuff to get that mana, this creature can't be blocked for this turn. So not the most powerful effects on these two cards, but there are some stronger Waterbending cards in the game, and so you're going to really want to get a lot of sources of creatures and artifacts that you can tap down to synergize. And I brought up 2 examples here. We have Barrels of Blasting Jelly, costs 1 mana. It's not particularly good early on, but the ability to spend 1 mana ideally on turn 1, but maybe later, and you'll be able to constantly tap this if you have a Waterbending heavy deck. And then when you have 5 mana to spare, you can sacrifice this artifact and deals 5 damage to a target creature. So it's essentially going to be late game good removal for you, and early game it's going to be a way to consistently generate excess mana. And being a 1-cost card, it's going to be quite easy to get down, and it's also a colorless card, so it's even easier. I gave Turtle Duck as another example. It's a 1 mana card, it's a 0/4. I don't think it's powerful on its own, but these are the sort of cards that are going to be elevated by Waterbending, because they're going to have an impact in the game every turn that you're able to Waterbend, generate an excess mana, and a 0/4 blocker early on isn't bad, and then in the late game you might use its ability to do a little bit of damage, makes it a 4/4 with trample until the end of turn. I could see a card like this becoming much better with Waterbending, even though I think it's not the greatest to begin with. It's also worth noting Bending in general does have some synergies. We haven't been revealed the whole set yet, so I'm just going to use Avatar Aang as an example. But Avatar Aang, if you Waterbend, Earthbend, Firebend, and Airbend in the same turn, you get to transform him. And then the transformed version of Aang is very powerful. So this is an example of where, I mean, obviously this would be a 4-color deck, but it's an idea that Bending in general might have some synergies outside of just the specific types of Bending. There might be an interesting 4-color deck if you're drafting this format. Maybe there's support for it. Once we see all the cards, we'll get a better idea. But this is a fun little build around that you might come up against in a draft format or even sealed. Another keyword that's returning this set is lessons. I believe lessons came in Strixhaven, and there was a learn keyword as well. Learn allowed you to pull lesson cards from your sideboard and put them into your hand or your main deck. Here we're not going to get any learn cards as far as I'm aware in this format. So lesson cards are just mostly the instants and sorceries that are going to have some kind of synergies. So here we have Abandon Attachments. It's an instant lesson. It allows you to discard a card. If you do, you draw 2 cards. So it's a pretty normal spell that you would see at 2 mana. But what's worth noting, because it's a lesson, you have things like Avatar the Last Airbender, and whenever you cast a lesson spell, Aang gains lifelink till the end of turn. There's a couple other cards that have these sorts of synergies. So Master Piando. Whenever Master Piando attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal an ally, equipment, or lesson card from them, and then you can put one of them into your hand. So again, if you have something like Master Piando in your deck, lesson cards in general are going to go up in value. And then we have Soccer, Bold Boomeranger. Whenever you cast an artifact or lesson spell, put a 1/1 counter on Soccer. So again, if you have tons of lesson cards, you have Soccer, you play him early, he could become a very big creature that your opponent has to answer. So lessons in of themselves don't do much, but they are almost like a tribal synergy that you might build around. Really just depends what cards you have in your deck. So shrines are making a comeback in this format. We have Southern Air Temple, and Southern Air Temple is an enchantment shrine. Whenever it enters, put 1/1 counters, X 1/1 counters even, on each creature you control, where X is the number of shrines you control. And whenever another shrine you control enters, put 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So shrines in general are just a type of enchantment that generally gets stronger the more shrines you have. So far they've only revealed 1 shrine for the set. There's bound to be a bunch, and the main synergy for shrines is shrines. It's just get as many shrines in, they self-synergize, and they can be very powerful. This one has a strong enters effect, so for example you could airbend it out of the game and then put it back in, and you'll be getting a lot of very strong bonuses quite consistently. Aang's Journey does have synergy with shrines. It allows you to search your library for a basic land card. However, if the spell was kicked, you may search your library for a basic land card and shrine card. You can reveal them and put them into your hand. So if you have cards like Aang's Journey, again, shrines will go up in value in your deck. Sagas are making a comeback. Nothing too interesting to say about them, other than the fact that Sagas always have enters effects on them, because when they enter you get the first lore counter for free. And what that means is if you're doing an airbending deck where you are able to pull permanents from the board and put them back on the board for 2 mana, something like the Rise of Sozin is going to be very powerful, because not only can you destroy all creatures, but as long as you play an airbend card within the next turn, because by the 3rd turn it transforms, you'll be able to do that effect again. And they haven't revealed too many Saga cards yet. I think this is the only one they've revealed, but obviously they all have enters effects. If any of them have a strong turn 1, turn 2 counter on them, then you'll be able to replay that several times using airbending, which is a pretty neat synergy. Cool, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and you're excited to play the next set. I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye bye.